one that's on the page and you're like, I wish that was more important to me. Have you guys ever thought that or had that thought? Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry to be talking so much. That's the thing.
That's why we're here.
Okay, so I've just realized, like, I'm being methodical. I'm also like super serious, and I was like, I've got to be more creative and play more. So on Saturday, like late afternoon, evening, I got this book from the library on Mandela stones. And so, I mean, I did a terrible job, but I like tried to copy it with painting, and because I had some leftover paints from What Now, and those acrylics and stuff, yeah. So I'm like, you know what? It's gonna look terrible, but I just have to do something that's not my computer or my brain.
Oh, totally.
And yeah, I mean, you're so good at that, and I wish I could be better, but I was like, I have to start at the beginning.
Just
like,
carving out time for it.
Yeah,
It'll make a big difference in
I
your
know.
day.
I have to have like an appointment to get on my schedule
Well, that's
for me
why
to
we
like
like
be
doing
creative
the
and
arts.
playful.
Yeah, that's why we like doing the art here, because it's
Yeah.
like most of you guys are never going to pick up a paintbrush unless someone makes you and carves the time out for you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I love this.
Right.
You know, but yeah, no one makes you do it.
Right.
Too.
Okay, I just have one more question. And I just, what if someone looked at your schedule that you've written out, okay? What would they say your number one value is? What do you value most? If they look at your schedule, what would they
That's a
say?
good one.
Okay, based on that, what would they say your top two values are? I'd love each of you to answer that. For me, it would be like friendship. Based on the phone call aspect. Even though,
the time
and a lot of times I'm on the phone and I'm really multitasking, like I'm straightening up this or I'm pounding out a bracelet, you know, so I'm doing two things a lot of the time, or I'm just driving somewhere. And,
Yeah.
but
Time to
anyways,
drive is good.
yeah. So what do you guys think? If someone just looked at your time, what would they say you value most?
I would say my kids,
Mhm.
just because it's just my
The
days
amount of
consumed.
time it's
Yeah,
consumed.
the amount of time.
And you have a lot of them, so that follows too.
So that would be true then. That
Yeah.
they look at you, they say.
But it's
you value
interesting
your
because
kids.
that's what Father wants me to focus on.
Mm.
Like, focus on these kids.
Yeah.
Like, so
Awesome. I love it.
it's a good
I
thing.
think for me, probably connectedness with others, whether it's my family or friends.
Yeah, being connected.
Just trying to keep I spend a lot of time, like you said, talking with people on the phone or texting or messaging or
Mhm.
whatever, keeping in touch with people.
Yeah, I'm that same way. If you look at my phone, my husband's always like, how many people are you talking with at once?
Yeah, seriously. How many conversations?
Because that I love that. I love that.
I've been Marco Poloing a lot this week too, with you and a couple other girls, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm like, when am I going to listen to these? I don't have time to listen to these because I can't listen to them while I'm on the phone. I can multitask and watch her Marco
While you're
Polo while I'm
driving.
talking to this person.
But you can't look though. You should listen when you're driving. Anyway.
Yeah, while I'm driving, I have done. I actually usually Marco Poloing while I'm doing my makeup. I'll just like Marco Polo like you and another friend. Anyways,
So
it just
what-
cracks me up.
Thought that's occurred to me though is, like you, I spend a lot of time with my family, thinking about my family, and my mom is always been like a stay-at-home mom, and so she doesn't have a lot of her own hobbies and her own things, and I've always kind of resented that because I'm grateful that she dedicated all of her time and energy to us, but she very much lives vicariously through us, and she doesn't have anything for her own, and I don't want to be that way, and but then I think I am much more independent than my mom is, but yet I kind of think, what if I was just by myself? Like, my kids are all grown, and say something happened to my husband, like, who am I? Like, what would I be without my family? Because that's something that kind of always bothers me.
Yeah. It's just information for you to be aware of, and
Yeah.
see where it goes from there.
You'd be surprised at how many people feel like that. A lot of the women I coach feel the same way.
Really?
I'm like, what are you passionate about? And they're like, I don't know. Like, they're so, and we're listening to this book, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, I like
And he
him.
talks about that in there, that we define ourselves as these labels, as a mom, but once we got to find our true authentic self. But like, when our kids are grown and gone, there's so many people that still hold on to that
And they
label
say to
as
themselves, what now?
That's exactly. I'm like, I know about this class that you can send your friends to.
But it's true, that's why we
It
started
is.
it, because you're like, who am I besides a mom?
And at
Yeah.
Family Fusion, we call it liminal. It's like that liminal space between, like, the space between point A and point B. Like, people, you're an empty nester, or you've been raising kids, and now you're an empty nester, and really just don't know what to do with yourself, and it's
I think it can feel like, with Russ's mom, she's just like super way over absorbed in her children's lives, and it's like she depends on them for her self-esteem, and that's exhausting. I don't want to be in charge of someone else's self-esteem. I want them to have their own thing, do their own thing, and make their own life, and then have me be just like a little icing or frosting on the cake, instead of me being responsible for them feeling like they're fulfilled, you know?
I think with what you said, what came to me is that years ago when I was doing my first business, one of my partners was very, her kids were younger, school age or whatever. And, I kind of asked her a question about that. I'm like, do you ever feel like you're taking time away from your family trying to build your business and everything? And she said, I feel like my responsibility is to lead out and show my children how to live a life, or how to have things that other than your family. And I thought about that so much. And because I have struggled with that, feelings of taking time away from my family. And honestly, I feel like that's why I haven't gotten really serious about my business until now, that my last one is gone.
It helps.
And but I thought about that a lot. So maybe remember that whatever you're doing, you're modeling it for your children. They'll see what you're doing. And that's a pretty big one.
Well, and I think it's that balance too. It's like, I think like the Lord's like getting you prepared, and then he kind of unleashes you when that responsibility is lesser.
Yeah.
It might not just be in your head.
Yeah, I'm going
that might
with
be
that.
how he planned it. Yeah, no, I really do believe that, because I feel the same way. Like, I've been unleashed a little bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely easier. Okay, so our other homework was paying attention to your words and the way you speak. So anybody have anything to say about that? I know you guys are probably very careful with your words already.
it's our job.
Well, Jeanette, she used her words. We could have her talk about her thing on Facebook.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead, share that. We would love it if you don't mind.
So, I went to the movie Unplanned last Friday night. Unplanned. It's a story about Abby Johnson, who used to work for Planned Parenthood, and she ran a clinic, and her experiences with that. And it shows, the first 10 minutes are really hard to watch, because it actually shows what turned her, and she was asked to go and hold the ultrasound wand, because they were short on staff to hold the ultrasound wand while the doctor performed anyway, so it shows everything. And I got pregnant when I was 17, and so I had my daughter was there at the movie with me. She was now almost 30, and the whole time I just was shocked in watching in horror, because I really believe the experience that I had as a 16, I was like barely 17, and I was so embarrassed, because I'm LDS, and I was so worried about what people are going to think about me. It was the biggest, because I was the Molly Mormon. I was the goody-goody.
Well, and she's from a really small town in
small
Utah,
town.
Roseville.
In Utah? Oh,
Yeah.
And
the worst
so
case scenario, right?
It was bad, and I knew it was going to be bad. I knew it was going to be big news and big. Anyway, and so as I sat there and watched, and how the whole thing was handled, and I thought I would have done that. Had there been an option like that for me, I would have went in there, because I didn't know what it was like to carry a baby or bond with a baby. I didn't know what that felt like. I just wanted out of this uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I woke up the next morning, and I'm not kidding, I felt like I had bawled all night long. And after watching the movie, my head pounded all day long.
You just were so overwhelmed with emotion.
So overwhelmed with, and the reality of what could have been for me. And just very grateful that for whatever reason I was protected from that, and I didn't have access to something like that. And anyway, so I just felt strongly that I needed to put it out there, and just tell my story, and how grateful I am that wasn't an option for me, basically. And it was hard, because I served as in the State Young Women's Presidency one time, and remember the state presidency specifically asked me not to be open about it.
Oh my goodness.
And so So I've really not been open about it at all. I've not really, and partly my choice too. I don't really want people to know that about
Well,
me.
they don't have to. I mean,
Right.
yeah, they don't have to.
And so I've never really shared anything. I mean, my husband shared it in his TED Talk, which I was mortified. I was like, really, you're gonna put that out there?
Oh my heavens.
And
Jeanette, I love, his was my favorite, and that was part of the reason why I'm just telling you.
yeah, so yeah, it was really good. He shared it, but I was like, oh, I hope no one watches this. I hope no one sees this. Anyway, but that after I watched that, I couldn't stay silent and not say, this is my story. And
So did you feel a ton of, like, did you feel the Holy Ghost just like,
oh yeah,
it's
like
time.
I was out running that morning, and my husband's like, he was out working in the yard. He's like, I didn't even tell him I was doing it. I just got online, and I was like, as I was running, I was typing things. I'd stop and type things in my phone because it was just like coming. And he's like, I could tell something was on your mind. When you got home, you made a beeline. I was like, I had to get in there before I talked to myself out.
Totally. Yeah. That's like our class yesterday.
Yeah.
Do it now before that second thought comes in.
Yeah.
And takes you out of it.
Because I do that a lot. Anyway, so yeah, so I just put it out there. And I honestly, in my mind, I was like, no one really pays attention to me on Facebook because I don't really post that often. I'm hardly ever on Facebook. And I'm like, no one really pays attention, but I can get this out there and maybe somebody will help someone. And literally it was just like wildfire, and I got so many wonderful wonderful responses. People were so kind and nice, and people from my, that time of my life said some really nice things. People now, I had no idea. It's a shocker, and so I know I'm going to talk the word again. It's all good.
Cares? You spoke your truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
So
So,
awesome.
so it's out
He's
there.
smiling so
For-
good.
I am. She's just like, sorry about the state presidency. Oh.
Yeah, and that's
I lit
okay.
up a
And-
little bit with that one.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's good. I may never work with the young women again, but that's okay.
You are the person they need to read. Guess what?
You're real.
One of them is going to have that happen.
Well,
to
that's
her.
why, and I turned around and
Biggest
took my
process.
13-year-old to it because I wanted her to see, because I'm like, if you're ever in a situation, whether it's you or you have a friend, or at least be educated and know, I just want her to be informed.
Yeah.
And it's rated R, so I don't go to those
Yeah.
movies either.
Yeah, they rated it R on purpose just to keep people away.
Yeah,
from
I
it.
think so. Because it's very,
Just that first part,
it's
right?
very uplifting and has some really neat messages in
I
it.
can't wait to see it. I had my daughter Olivia, the one who got pregnant. I had her read your post.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I'm like, "Do you want to go see that movie with me?" She's like, "No."
I know, I really think
She just doesn't want to feel all those emotions.
it was
and,
hard, and I'm not gonna lie.
and having just gone through it herself.
Yeah.
Because she said the same exact thing to me that you were thinking. She was like, "I can't do this. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I cannot do this. I cannot do this."
Yeah.
And she had those things available to her, so it's just a huge blessing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeanette, did
Awesome.
you talk about the movie in your post?
Yeah.
That you had seen it? So not only does everybody know your story, they
The
now know you
movie.
watched a rated R movie.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because it was the right thing to do, and she can make
Love
her own
it.
decisions.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
breaking all the rules.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Stir in the pot.
Stir in the
Love
pot.
it.
One of
Anyway.
our What Now girls was in your picture. Joellen or who is in who? Okay, she's in the front. She's older. She has short brown hair. But she took What Now. It's not Liz, but she reminds me of Liz. She's like one of our older girls.
Jennifer? Is it Jennifer?
No. A while ago, one of our older girls. Anyways, I'll
Look at
pull
the
up her
picture
post
and-
look
and
and show
then-
you. And I
Yeah.
was like, I know her. She was wearing one of the shirts.
Yeah, not only did I go see it, but I'm like, I took a bunch of people with me.
I
Two
love what you
times.
said about motherhood.
She was in poster.
I love what you
class.
said about motherhood is not a death sentence.
It's
that
not a
was
death
my
sentence.
favorite
And
thing.
I
It's
feel
the
like-
best thing ever.
You've seen it too, Sarah?
No, I just seen her post.
Oh.
My post. I just
I'm
said,
trying to see the
I
movie.
said,
If you
it's
guys
time
wanna
we
go,
tell
I
the-
want
it's time we
to
tell
do
the
it.
truth
Okay,
that
when do you
motherhood
wanna
is
go?
not a death
Saturday?
sentence.
I love that.
And that's like,
It was
I felt
amazing.
like that's what had happened to me. I just received a death sentence.
Yeah, my
And
life
that's
is over.
not true. And even if you're 17, it's not a death sentence.
No.
Motherhood is not in any way, shape, or form at any age a death sentence.
No.
Ever.
To read it.
Ah!
Send it to my friend.
Yes, you do.
I love that you
I
shared
sent
it too.
her
Do you
your
know how many
post.
people you
Oh, you
just
did?
I
helped?
screenshotted the one
So
where
if you
you
did
did
even one person, I will be,
She
it'll
doesn't
be
know
worth it.
how.
Yep.
But it was
She
definitely,
doesn't know how to handle it.
Like
She
I
doesn't
was-
know what it looks like.
And first and
So I
foremost, you
was
helped
hoping
yourself.
that would-
You
Yeah.
just spoke your truth.
yeah.
Yeah, my gosh.
Well, I had to go back and edit it because I was typing it so fast. And then
The
then I
Lord
was
is like,
oh wait, I totally made it. So I had to go back and edit, and then people were starting to already read it and like it. I was like, wait, no, I'm not done. I messed up. I have to fix it
Oh, you
first.
posted it and then you
I
edited it
posted and I
after
was
that?
like, oh wait, wait, well, oh gosh, I gotta go back and change that. Yeah, and then
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, wait, don't read it yet, don't read it yet.
Well, I love what Brene Brown said in her talk. After she gave a talk on vulnerability, she talked about having a vulnerability hangover.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I just exposed myself.
I know, well, that's,
No,
I
well,
literally
that's
was
not
like, okay. And we had state conference that night, and Chet went to the Suns game instead, and I had to go by myself. I was like, I really don't want to go in there by myself.
But you did.
But I did.
So-
Yay!
Oh,
Look
God.
at you, strong lady.
Oh,
That's
that's amazing.
And I didn't die.
And I didn't die.
I didn't
have
even
a quote
dirty
on that.
looks.
I
Yeah.
didn't die.
Yeah.
Seriously, I think you should put that at the end of every page in our journals when we're journaling about hard things. And I didn't die.
And
You
I
know what I'm
didn't
saying?
die.
You always think you're gonna die. I didn't die.
Reminder. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you for sharing that. So just really quickly before we get into the content of today, how's the sidekick thing working out for you guys? Is it working out okay?
I have a
All right.
awesome sidekick.
Me too.
Okay, good. You do? Are you guys motivating yourself? You're not feeling like the pressure. I don't want it to feel like a pressury thing. I want it to just be enough to kind of remind you to focus yourself throughout the day. So, okay. Very good. I love
Keep
it.
it up, keep it up.
All right.
Do you guys have inserts for this?
Oh, I was wondering that too. Yeah.
Well, that's perfect timing because we haven't really actually started the lesson yet.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
this is
We
good.
have it.
So I just have to tell you that this topic has been breathing down my neck forever.
That's my word this year.
Is it really?
It is.
You're gonna love
It's
this.
like I have to ring. Says
As
trust.
I thought about what I wanted to share with you guys in flight school, this one was huge. I was like, okay, it's going to be about trust, and so I'm really excited. I feel very attached to this topic right now. So, and you know, Sarah's got stuff she's going to add to it. I think it'll be amazing. So, why do you think that trust is such an important quality when we're talking about up-leveling or upping your game?
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Say that again, Camille. I'm
Why,
so
I know
sorry.
you guys are looking at your pages. That's okay. They're awesome pages.
you.
She did a great job on them.
Okay, first of all, I'm seeing self-trust. Are we talking about trusting God?
We're
Trusting
talking
God?
about
We're talking
all of it.
about-
All of it.
Oh,
Okay,
just
okay.
wait, girl.
I'm like, can we clarify the
Yes.
rules here?
You're jumping ahead. You're jumping way ahead.
Okay.
So,
That's okay.
why do you guys think that this topic is so important when it comes to up-leveling? You guys know what I mean when I say up-leveling. That's why you're here. You're upping your game.
I
So-
think it's the opposite of fear, kind of. Faith is the opposite of fear,
Yeah,
but
that's a
faith
good
and
one.
trust kind of go. I think as long as if you don't trust, you're gonna,
You'll hit a roadblock.
yeah.
If
You're
if
just
that's
gonna be
one
too
of your
scared to try
issues.
anything or.
Yeah.
So Hayden and I have been talking about trust, and we're kind of debating like, if you had perfect trust, would that mean you would never worry? Like, is all worry based in a lack of trust?
That is an awesome question.
Well, I think with trust, that means that you are trusting that whatever happens, it's supposed to be. So it also could bring peace because
Right.
you could be like,
Yeah, not necessarily in the future, but you can also
right,
trust
just
the
knowing
past
that hey,
makes
what,
sense.
yeah, this is all happening as part of a plan, and I trust that whatever it's supposed to happen the way it's supposed to happen, as long as I'm moving.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I had that conversation with my coach, who is not LDS. She's very spiritual, but she's not LDS. And she was talking about kind of the things we talked about in our webinar, the Mountaintop Moments webinar, about how you guys have she was saying something like, you kind of are saying two different things. You're saying that, you know, that God's in charge of everything and he knows everything, and therefore, the way she was looking at it was like,
She's not LES.
yeah, she's not.
So she
Yeah,
has
I said that. And then she
yeah.
was saying, so you don't have. So you're saying that you don't have a choice. And I'm like, nope, that's not what I was saying. But it was a good conversation because it forced me to kind of focus in on what I really meant. You know, what we meant by giving that about the part that God's, you know, in charge and he knows everything, with the part of us that has our agency to do what we're going to do.
He knows what we're gonna choose,
Right.
but we're still choosing it.
Yes, exactly. I was trying to explain it to her, and she was kind of like, I could tell she was kind of like, okay, you know, she wasn't completely buying in, but I felt really good about it. So anyway, so look at the amount of trust you have in yourself. That's what I want. That's what we're going to reflect on first, is the amount of trust that you have in yourself. Let me get my workbook pages so I can be congruent here. Self-trust is the first secret of success, the essence of heroism. Into thine own self be true. So one of the first and most important relationships that you have besides with God and Heavenly Father, Jesus and Heavenly Father, there, is yourself. Okay, so you do have a relationship with yourself, and that relationship is really important. So what I want you to consider is what it would look like if you met you for the first time. If you went to lunch with you. Like, what would you think about this person? How are you showing up in the world is the question. So let's look at these questions right here. If you were your own best friend, could you rely on her, meaning you? It's kind of weird to read this. Unconditionally to have your back. If you went to lunch with yourself, would you be on time? This is something we talk about a lot in my house because I live with two men, neither of them who are very cognizant of deadlines and time, and it's kind of a sticking point with me. So you might see that show up once in a while. Are you worth being on time for if you need yourself to get the hard things done? Will she? Would you go the extra mile for yourself, even if you were the only one who would benefit? And would you rearrange your schedule for yourself so you could work on you? So these are more for like self-reflection. You guys can like fill in the little altimeter. Is that how you pronounce it, Sarah?
Yes.
And see kind of where you are. Yeah, I love
Look,
this
she
whole-
flies higher. She's at the trees, and then she's with the birds, and then she's with the clouds, and then she's with the sun. So just fill out, or you can even draw an arrow to the line where you feel like your self-trust is. Like, how reliable are you for your own self?
Here's another question to consider. Sorry, I know you're trying to write. If you set a date with yourself to go to lunch or to something else, would you cancel it by text 30 minutes before? Not saying any of you have ever done that, cancel something by text just before you were going to do it. Or would you show up late? And then when you were having lunch with yourself, would you spend a lot of time looking at your phone or being distracted? These are just things to think about.
Oh yeah, here's that one.
So some of these things are kind of outlandish examples, obviously. But it's just something for you to consider. Is there a, okay, sorry. Didn't want to do that. All right, Sarah, do you want to kind of share your thoughts about what trust looks like to you?
Yes. Okay. So when I was talking with Camille about this trust part of the lesson, for me the word kind of like reliability was more than trust when we were talking about like the self-trust, like how reliable am I for myself. And the question to me is, how worth it? How much do I value myself? Because that's really what it comes down to, is am I worth protecting? Am I worth setting up a good, like Camille with her morning, she's really important to herself because she's gonna give herself 4.5 hours, right? To
That
take
includes
care.
a lot, though, just saying.
See, she's immediately saying I don't love myself that much.
I
But
do.
she does.
Pretty
She's
awesome.
taking caring
No
of. She's
apologies.
taking. Yeah, exactly. Don't back.
All right,
no
all right.
backpedaling. Anyway, so these things when we set, it's kind of like when we set a goal for ourselves and we say, okay, I'm gonna get up at 9 o'clock. Okay, it used to be for me like to get up at 9 o'clock. My life is totally different now, living in this house with my new life. I don't struggle anymore with getting up and getting the day going, and feeling good about how I'm spending my time. Part of it is I don't have really dark curtains in my bedroom, so the sun comes up and my room's really bright, and but most of it is because like I'm not under this depressing cloud of abuse anymore. So anyways, so my trust account has grown a lot because it's like I want to get up early and I want to get going on my day, and that's what the night before Sarah tells herself to give the tomorrow Sarah a really great head start. But then I let myself down every morning for like a year probably, and I just didn't get going and I didn't do the things that I had promised myself that I would do. So Sarah wasn't very reliable for her. Now if somebody else needed me to get up at 6 o'clock to get them to school, there's no way I was not going to do it. But for my own self, I wasn't reliable. I wasn't trustworthy to take care of me. But I would take care of anybody else that asked me. So that's kind of what the angle that I took when Camille was talking about this concept. So when I was in Young Women's, we had a retreat, and I gave a lesson on this subject, kind of the way I looked at it, called Loving the Tomorrow You. And it was like the tonight me needs to really, get to bed and not eat half that pizza in order to take care of the tomorrow me. And if I can just love the tomorrow me enough to give her that good day and give her, take care of her body today, so that she has the best possibility of having the best day tomorrow and not dragging her down. So it's like, I need to love my present self enough to take care of my future self and set her up for success. And that's kind of just the way I looked at it. So yeah, just loving the tomorrow you enough to take care of the today you. And the amazing thing is when you start doing that, like Camille says, like we kind of talked about it as like an account also, like you're building your trust account, or you're helping your girl fly higher because you're giving her more and more fuel by doing the things you're supposed to be doing to take care of her and being reliable for her. And especially with those things that are only going to affect her. Like it's not going to affect somebody else if I sleep in, and as long as I still get all my other stuff done, I'm not going to affect them. It just affects my heart and my soul. So I really first noticed, I talk a lot about like the turning point of when I started reading my scriptures every day in like 2003. And everyone except for Michelle has heard the story, but a friend of mine just said something one time to another friend while we were visiting teaching, and she was just like, the thing that changed my life, or that helped me the most when I was going through the most difficult time in my life, which was recovering from abuse as a child. She said, reading my scriptures for a half hour every day, see, that's why I'm stuck on the half hour thing, made the hugest difference in my life. And I was just like, well, I am suffering from this really bad eating disorder, and my life is pretty miserable. Maybe I should read my script. Maybe I should like clue into that and start reading my scriptures every day, like for a half hour. I was a little bit hit or miss, but I was pretty much I was raising 4 kids, and I was just exhausted and tired, and I didn't have time for scriptures. I had no idea how much an impact it would be. So anyway, so I just started reading for a half hour every day. And it was like this trust that I started building in myself, and this reliability. It was like, I'm a person that does that. And it was like I took that to the bank. And then I could be a person that like is really inspired with the way they teach their classes. And I'm a person who does these other really important but seemingly like mundane things. And not a couple years after that, but the year that my sister died in 2011, I went to the temple every single week for 20 weeks. I'd never really gone more than once every month or two. But it was like I just kind of started becoming that person too. And then 2015, I went every single week. No, 2016, I went every single week the entire year. And so it's just kind of fun, like when you start being really reliable and taking care of yourself. And it's like with exercise too, like I can be that kind of a person who really takes care of my body, and all of a sudden you're like, how else can I take care of myself? How else can I give myself a boost for the next day and the next week and the next year? And you start doing those things, and then all of a sudden you're really functioning at a super high level because you're taking care of yourself in all these different ways, and it just builds that self-trust. And so I love it. I always think about taking care of that tomorrow me, and she's worth taking care of, And I never did. This is exactly opposite of my eating disorder. I was never taking care of her. I was actually making tomorrow worse by what I was doing. And I was just destroying the tomorrow me for the, selfish addiction of the today me.
Saturday we had a stake women's conference, and the state presidency's spouses spoke, and a couple of the ladies in our stake, and they talked about holiness. And the one talk I really liked is she asked a couple of people in the stake to ask yourself, how would a holy woman do blank?
Yes,
And
that leads so perfectly into the rest of our
and
lesson.
it was like, she used like so many different examples, and these women used it in so many different areas, that like whether it was with their kids or with their job or with, their spouse or whatever it was, how would a holy woman do this? And it was just really, really interesting how they kind of changed, like how they did things, their perspective and stuff.
Yeah,
And how
and she takes care of herself, and she's reliable for herself, and she gives herself the best opportunities to live her best life. And that's awesome. She deserves it.
Sorry, can I add something really
Don't
quickly?
ask, just add it.
Okay, so Gretchen Rubin is this author who wrote Happiness Project, and she has a podcast. Yeah, I love her. So, are you guys familiar with the 4 Tendencies?
I have
Does
that book
ring a bell?
upstairs.
Okay.
I haven't started it yet, though.
Okay.
No.
So she talks about this and how there's 4 kind of temperaments based on how you react to outer and inner expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds to me like you're an
Yes.
obliger.
Yes.
So an obliger can meet
Oh,
outer
yes.
expectations, but not inner.
Yes.
And so the interesting thing is, like, it sounds like you've come up with some really good strategies and tools to kind of manage your temperament. And I appreciate that you guys had us do sidekicks because basically those are accountability partners. And she talks
and they
about how
help you.
obligers need.
They need the outside
Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah.
Because taking care of my old self, taking care of myself was not enough of a motivation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I need somebody else to come in and make me do it
Yeah.
until I figured out that I'm worth doing that for.
Anyway,
So
it's
also in the book,
super
right?
interesting. It's called The Four Tendencies. I was telling Chad about it on the phone.
That's the name of the book?
Because I
No,
think
I literally have it upstairs. I'm gonna
Callie
grab it.
is
You
your
guys can
third
see the
daughter,
cover.
right? I think she's a questioner.
She's so hard.
Yeah, I was telling
Yeah,
Chad, I'm like, she's a
definitely.
questioner.
What's the name of the author? again?
So Gretchen Rubin, it's transformative. Like it totally changed
I
my
think
relationship with my son when I realized he was a questioner. Because I'm like, oh, he's not just doing that to be belligerent.
He needs to know.
He has to know for himself. He has to internalize it.
Mhm.
He can't just rely on other people telling him.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And I'm totally not
highly
that way
recommend.
either.
I
Yeah.
have a couple of those in my house.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
helps
when you understand it's just
so
a personality trait.
much.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
just
their
a personality
temperament,
trait.
and you can't change it, and so don't
Just deal
try
with
to
it.
change it.
If you just take it from the right approach, just deal it, it's not like dealing with it like it's a super difficult thing, but once you see life from their perspective, you're like, oh, he just needs to understand the why. They just want to understand the why.
Mhm.
And that's fair. That's legit.
Right.
In their mind, it's really fair.
That's what they need.
That's totally what they need. Okay, so we have some journaling, just like 2 journaling questions there at the top of the
Wait,
page.
I have something to add, hold on,
Oh, yes.
don't go there yet.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so just to kind of round up what we were saying, I want you guys to consider the times in your day where you tell yourself you're gonna do something, like get up early, go for a run, whatever, and you're not doing it and you think it's not hurting anybody. It's hurting you, okay? It's having an impact on you in the way that you trust yourself. So that's what, when you're doing your journaling, I want you to consider that. Look for areas where you might be doing that. It might not be obvious, that's why we're having you point your brain on that. And sometimes that account of trusting yourself is overdrawn because you've been doing that, like Sarah said, for so long where she just took care of the rest of the family but didn't take care of herself. So it will take a while from you making those deposits for it to get up to a place where you like maybe really noticing those differences. So yeah, take just a second on that next page and see if there's anything that comes to mind about what you could be doing differently to boost your self-trust. And then we'll go on to trusting others. And that second question, growing my self-trust this week, that's more for you guys. I want you to reflect ahead of time. This is what you're going to be thinking about and we'll report back next week. You haven't done that quite yet, but.
Jen, I thought I had just ordered that book, but it sounded really familiar because I've read Gretchen's stuff online about that book.
Mm-hmm.
The book I just ordered that my sister-in-law, well, hopefully she's gonna marry my brother and she'll be my sister-in-law. The 4 Agreements.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a great one.
Oh, yay, I'm excited. She said, I just read this book and it made me think of you and you need to read it, so I'm super excited.
I just got the Happiness Project Goodwill the other day.
Oh, you
Oh,
did?
yeah.
Okay. And if you listen to her podcast, if that's
Yeah.
easier, you can totally get what's in the book.
Right.
You know,
And
while
I
you're
love her
driving and
podcast.
stuff. Yeah, it's really good.
What's the other book, Sarah, that you have?
What?
What's the other book you have?
Oh, she was a speaker at Time Out for Women. When I went over and dropped off a bracelet at Allison Smith's house, she gave me this book to read. She's like, you'll love this book. So I haven't read it yet, but it's like
What's the text at the top above the title?
getting to the place where you can trust God with anything.
Trust.
Wow, good. We're talking about trust today. Someone needs to read this book apparently because I just
Yeah.
grabbed it because it was the other book on my
I was
list.
wondering if, Camille, when you guys were coming up with this lesson, Father was like, "This is for Shawnee, dear." Do you guys ever have that where you listen to
Shawnee,
general
yeah.
conference
Listen to
and you're
this
like
lesson.
listening to it talk? It's almost like, "Dear Shawnee, like listen to this."
Yeah. I would
Have
say
that
that's
happen
the
a lot.
Holy Ghost
You guys,
like
we
tapping
have
my shoulder like,
Oh,
hey,
totally.
hey.
I know.
Totally.
You're like, you had to give the whole world this talk just for me?
I know.
And you're welcome, world.
That's so
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you.
All right. That's how you know God is real when, those talks can mean something so personal to so many people. How we all feel like this talk was just for us. It's amazing.
That is
She
cool.
said, "Do this one, like project, kind of project."
All right. do you guys need 4 more minutes?
I'm good. I'm gonna come back to it.
All right, so I want to share a story, a pretty prominent story that happened to me. I feel like I'm going to sit for this one, is that okay? I woke up in a funny way. So I'm like, Jeff, I can't be stiff-necked when I'm teaching. So if I look like I'm being a little bit stiff-necked, it's
Stiff-necked.
because
It's
just
it's
a
not
little
your
right
right
neck.
physical.
I was laying on the foam roller.
Except for I can't see you on my camera. I'll move
Oh,
over.
okay. No. Okay, I can stand. Look, I can even turn.
No, it's fine. It's the Wonder Woman
You want to
hand.
just chill to
making you do it.
It's okay, because I'm going to sit down in just a minute. So, and this story makes me very passionate. So, you said your word for this year is trust. Okay, so my word for the year before last was finish. And I heard of people having this like word of the year thing. I had a friend that did that, and I thought it was a cool idea, but I'd never done it myself. But then I had this experience where I was working on something, and I used to do my daily devotional down in my front room. And so it's like you remember where you were when it happened. I was sitting on my couch, I was reading, I was pondering, I was meditating, and all of a sudden I feel like this concept dropped inside of my head. So I knew it wasn't mine because it just like showed up like that. And the word was finish. It was just like, it wasn't just the word finish, it was a list of things I needed to finish. I'm like, really? Okay. And so I did what you do when you get that kind of information. You get a pen and a paper and you write fast, right? Or you type fast if you're on your computer. So anyway, what happened was, as I reflected on what just happened later on, I was like, I'm really good at starting things. I get really excited about projects, especially if it involves other people or if it involves a party or something fun. I'm all over it. But my track record for finishing things is less perfect. And it was definitely a wake-up call for me, because what I had to start doing was pinching things off. Like when you're like, you deadhead a plant. You guys know what I'm talking about. Like if you grow a rose and the rose is starting to die, you pinch it off before the energy keeps going to that and turns to seed. So it's a gardening concept because I'm such a
more
big
energy
gardener.
can go to the flowers that are actually needing the blooming.
Exactly. The
Instead
energy
of
can go
energy
there.
is going to this one
Yeah.
that's just kind of dying. It's just sucking that energy out.
So it was like that. I wrote a blog post about it and I called it Close Every Door. Because I had to start closing serious doors to be able to channel my energy in the place that I needed to finish things. And so that became, I didn't realize how it was going to work with trust, but wow, it really did, because the story that I was telling myself as a result of not finishing things was that I'm a creative person. I can't afford to be worried about this. I don't want to change this part of me because that creativity could shut off.
Right.
And I had a whole story in my
It's
head.
black or white.
Yeah,
story,
about
right.
what creative people do. And I was like, oh my gosh, those were all lies. I was telling myself, I was spinning this story about the fact that finishing was not important and that I needed to keep that part of me intact that would keep taking on new projects. But when I got my word of the year and started doing those little things on the list, I learned that that was not true at all, that I could still be a creative person. I could still be part of projects, but I didn't have to not finish them. And so I'm sharing with you guys, so if you have that thought about something, I want you to always be revisiting the stories you're telling yourself all the
Asking
time.
if they're true.
Yeah,
Wow.
you have to keep holding them up to the light. Is
'Cause
this one a
sometimes
lie?
You tell them so many times that you just
Oh yeah.
you
I was
start
bought
to
in.
believe them. Yeah.
I was bought in with my story, and I think that's why he did that very direct thing with me, is because, I was trying to build this business. I was trying to do all these things. I was trying to do yoga, and then I had this mentorship, and then I was working in this and this and this and this, and I know he was up there going, are you kidding me? You gotta pinch it off. So anyway, that's my finished story.
It kind of reminds me of what Jen was saying about her schedule. It was kind of like, okay, just look at your schedule and ask yourself, is this really the best one anymore? Is this really serving me?
Yeah.
And until you stop and question everything, just ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really the best way?
I feel like President Nelson has been so good at that. Question
It's
everything.
true. Is this
Let's
tradition?
reevaluate.
You were just living tradition.
Yeah, right.
Your schedule was just
Right.
based on tradition at that
Yeah.
point. It wasn't based
Yeah.
on efficiency.
Right.
You know?
Right. Because one thing,
Love it.
so that's the exact thing I wrote. I can watch the story in my head to make sure it's not lies. Because one thing I was realizing, Camille and I went to this class at Education Week on Revelation, and he talks about how the Holy Ghost can't, what's the word? Ratify lies. Like, you know, if you're telling yourself lies in your head, basically he can't support that because that's not truth. And so that was one thing I realized yesterday, like, oh yeah, I felt kind of crummy yesterday because the story in my head was like constant lies, you know? And so it's like when you're not telling yourself lies, you can have the Holy Ghost more.
Yeah.
Wow.
It'll confirm what
I
you're saying.
think you can add one thing. Like with your whole like schedule thing, you kind of feel like you can justify it because you're like, oh, I'm getting this done and I'm getting this done. Well, while I'm out here, I'm just gonna run and do this too. And oh, well, since I'm all the way out here, I might as well just grab this thing here. And then by the end of the day, you know, it's just kind of not lost. So
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So turn the page for a minute. We're going to go back, but I want to explain this to you. So this concept of writing out 150 accomplishments, okay? What I want you to do is experience that. Does this sound familiar to you? Okay.
We do this too in a class.
Okay, good. All right, so you guys have
Not
already done it.
150, but
Okay, you can photocopy, stick it in there. So I want you to get into that place of achievement energy, of just like
This
feeling
book
what
is
it feels like.
copyrighted. She cannot.
we cannot have the same ideas.
No,
Basically,
you have the same ideas. You just can't use my hard work anymore. Just kidding.
no pictures. So this is your way of getting yourself to the place where you have evidence that what you're doing, that you're doing lots of things, okay? So you can start out your list with simple things. You know, I was born. I learned to crawl.
I came through that birth canal.
I learned to walk.
I mean, maybe I came through a C-section too. But
Right, I was born.
either way.
Whatever. So you can do that if you're just to get yourself going, because sometimes this is an intimidating exercise if you've never thought about your achievements or your accomplishments. But this is going to be part of your homework to bring back next week, and you guys will have a pass because you've already
Can we
done it.
add something to that?
Of
So we
course,
taught this in
absolutely.
a Relief Society. We taught our positive self-talk at a Relief Society, and we had them do accomplishment. And what did Mikkel say about?
She has a messy house.
Yeah, that was an
She's
accomplishment for her.
bipolar and like
That was
control.
huge to
Oh, I
me.
love
When she
it.
wrote that down and she got
Yeah.
up and spoke it, that
Yeah.
was huge to me.
Because she let it stay messy.
Exactly.
And she didn't
It was
like
an accomplishment
neurotically
for
freak out
her.
about it.
Exactly. Isn't that
Nice.
profound? I was so taken
Yeah,
aback by
everyone has
that.
their own truth, and for her, that
Exactly.
was true. Having a messy house is like major.
Exactly.
Self-control.
Exactly.
I will not spend the next hour cleaning this up. I wish I had that same phone.
Do you want to share your awesome
Yeah.
mom story? Okay.
So, when my kids started, you know, when I realized my kids were struggling in 2014 after my daughter got home from mission, and all of a sudden my son was arrested, and I was just like, then I found out my daughter had been drinking, and it was like this new massive lie that the adversary got stuck in my head for like the next 6 months that I believed was like, you were a failure. Like, look at all you did. I mean, not look at all you did, but 2 of your kids are doing great, and 2 of them are totally struggling. That means you failed, you know. And oh my gosh, one day after just hurting for so long, I finally was like, I'm a good mom. Like, I'm gonna see how good of a mom I was. Like, I'm tired of this lie, and I'm gonna fight it back. And so I just grabbed one of my journals, and I just started writing everything I've ever done as a mom. And it was like 9 months of pregnancy times 4, and then it was like I calculated like how many diapers I probably changed, you know, with like 2 years and 3 months of each child, and how many diapers a day, and then how many meals that I've made, and then how many birthday parties. You know how many awesome birthday parties I threw for my kids? You know how awesome my kids' cakes were? I did Darth Maul for my son, and I did his face with piping. Darth Maul. Like, his face is all the black and red, super detailed. Like, he had the coolest Darth Maul cake when he was like 5. And I was just like, and that's just one cake for one kid, you know? And then I just started thinking of all the family home evenings, and all this scripture study in the evening, and all this individual prayers at night by their bed. And I mean, the list was massive. And I was just like, yep, Satan, you're done. Drop the mic, mom. You're stupid. Like, how could I think I was a bad mom? Like, I'm literally one of the best moms that I know, because that was the most important thing to me as a child, as a mom, like, number one
What are your
priority.
values?
It was totally my value was being an awesome mom. I mean, luckily these last 3 or 4 years I've been preparing for when they're older, because even before mine flew the nest, we were teaching this class, like when Lily was still in high school. But oh my heck, writing it all out. And then we did the same thing. We did this 150 accomplishments one time too. And it was like, you know, I was writing all my political things down, like, you know, I spoke at like 3 different Tea Party events in front of hundreds of people. One time I even did it with my hair in a ponytail and only one of my earrings was still in my ear. And my friend afterwards asked me if this was like a pirate kind of a style fashion, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's TV cameras there and everything.
That's
So embarrassing. It was hilarious. But like when I just started writing my accomplishments in girls' camps and treks and devotionals and talks and lessons, it was like, because I was feeling super, I'm sure that August was just trying to stop us from teaching What Now or whatever it was. Yeah, it was probably right before What Now started.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it was like I needed like major tools to combat that lie that I can't do this, that I don't know enough and I haven't done enough hard things and what am I going to teach them and blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, oh yeah, I'm awesome. Okay.
Drop the mic. Get that out
Yes,
there.
mic drop moment.
All right, so we're going to go into building trust. So the first thing we talked about was with yourself. Now we're going to talk about building trust with other people. And so once you really have that strong foundation of self-trust, it becomes a little bit easier the benefits start to radiate outwards immediately. And also you become a little bit better able to discern who's worthy of trust because you understand it a little bit better. So I got a couple stories about this. What happens when you're forced to trust other people? This is a real question. What happens when you're forced to trust other people?
When you're forced.
When you or
When you can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Oh,
can't do it
gotcha,
yourself.
okay.
Yeah.
She's
Not
why
like
would I
someone's
ever
holding
be
a gun at
forced
your
to?
back.
I know,
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
like,
To rely on other people. When
Okay.
you're forced to rely on somebody else,
Okay.
what happens?
What happens?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Tell me what happens for you. You have to trust
I
somebody.
get really nervous
Mm-hmm.
You get nervous. Why do you get nervous?
Okay.
because I don't know if they're gonna do what I need them to do.
Yeah, you know you'll
can't
do it.
control
but
it.
will they do it? Yeah,
Yeah.
you
They can't control them.
Yeah. You find out that other people are flawed, that they screw up, that they're going to let you down. But the problem is with that, we're all that we have. I love that analogy. I don't know, I heard it in talk somewhere about Heavenly Father. You know, He gives His important things to do to us flawed humans, because we're all He has. And so it's not that we can't still get things done, and it's the same way in our relationships with other people. Sometimes we have to trust because we can't do it alone. And also, you only can go as far in your relationships as your ability to trust. And I'm married to someone who has the trust issue, and I'm not telling anything behind his back. He will admit it. Trusting other people is very difficult for him, for whatever reason. But we have to be able to get outside of ourselves and reach out to others, even though they're not trustworthy. I actually asked him, I interviewed my husband about this topic, and I said, what stands in the way of you trusting other people? And he said, hypocrisy, people's weaknesses, inconsistencies, foibles.
That's a great
So-
word. Foibles.
I know.
Yeah, we can use
That's
that
just
word.
that's just us, right? That's just how we are. But does that mean, the question for you guys is, does that mean we can't trust other people because they're inconsistent, because they're hypocrites, because they're yada, yada, yada?
Because they're fallen.
Yeah. This is actually a discussion.
You guys are
Well, I mean, we're
We're
all
deep
hypocrites.
thought.
Like, that's what I love about what Elder Bednar said. That we all have a gap between what we know and what we do. We're
That's
all
awesome.
hypocrites. And so anytime, like, yeah, my sister's not active. She's has this thing with like Mesa Mormons. All those Mesa Mormons. I'm just like, oh honey, just stop. Like
yeah.
everybody is a hypocrite. And once you start to realize that, it kind of gets you off your high horse of like, I'm so great. It's just those people.
Totally.
Yeah, my grandma used to always say, whenever you point your finger, there's 3 pointing back.
Oh, I like
Right,
that.
It
Right,
hurts.
like
And then you
that.
start pointing like this.
I know. Those people.
Those people.
In Thailand, they have this way of, it's rude to do this, like to summon someone this way. So the way they do it is they use all their fingers. They do this when they want you to come.
Because it's not as rude.
I don't
That
know.
was rude.
They have a lot of cultural
That's so funny.
interesting things in that culture anyway. So some advice my brother-in-law gave my first daughter, my older daughter who served a mission, when she went out, and he said, my advice to you, because we had like a little notebook, you know, an open house, and everybody wrote their little advice, and his advice to her was, everybody screwed up. And she actually mentioned that in her journal, and when she came home from her mission and she gave her talk, she said that in her talk that really stuck with her. But it's true that, that we can't let the fact that other people are screwed up affect our ability to trust. And it definitely can, if we let it. So I want you to look at some of these journaling questions, and I want to kind of have a discussion about maybe what you guys do when somebody has betrayed your trust or you feel like they're untrustworthy. How do you get over that hump? How do you begin to trust again? That's what I want to know. Anybody can you guys think of an experience where you've had to do that?
Well, let's journal for a few minutes first, and they can
Okay,
on it.
good idea. Great.
Want to turn on your music? I was cold. Are you having a hot flash?
Yes, I'm older than all of you, so I
don't
need
know
the
which-
fan.
Oh, there you know which buttons
I'm 53.
the fan is.
Isn't that?
That is crazy. I wouldn't have
What?
guessed that.
But she's
Thank you.
53.
I know.
Yeah.
She's 7 years older than me. How is that even possible? I feel like we're exactly
Well,
the
I was
same
born
age.
7 years before you, so that's how.
Do the math, sister. Oh my gosh, but look at you, like you seriously look
literal.
younger than me.
I would not have her skin at all.
So amazing.
Oh, shucks.
And then that yoga body of hers just does not stop.
All right. Do you guys feel like you were able to dig in a little bit?
I was like very deep. Guttural.
All right. I want to start with the last question first in the book. What is my process is determining if someone is trustworthy? I really want to know
Because we
how
want
you guys
to
do
copy
this.
Yes, we're not here to teach you, we're here to
we
find out your
from you
secrets.
guys.
That's why we invited the best 5 minds that we know.
That's right. It's the mega minds.
Time is usually the determinant for me.
Keep speaking.
So when I state my needs, like if I'm specifically thinking of a situation with my dad where I stated my needs with him as to, my dad always wanted to know like how much I was making a month, and he was always concerned financially about me, and the Spirit kept telling me, do not talk to him about this, do not talk to him about this. And so I'm like, Dad, I don't need money from you. Like, I feel like you wanted me to ask him for money. I said, I just need you to encourage me and tell me that I can do anything, and that I'm beautiful and that you got this. And he's like, well, I need to be realistic. I'm like, that is realistic. That's what I need, Dad, like from you. Like, if you want to know what I need from you, it's not money, it's I need this from you. This is when I was going through my divorce. Anyway, I kept stating my need over and over again to him, and then it finally just got, so time told me after so many, we call them remapping, after so many remappings, going back in and trying to, you know, state my needs to him, I just recognized that over time it didn't make a difference.
Right.
He wanted to see things his way, which is totally fine, but
Right, just let him give you the money. I don't
I'm like, that's the thing, it always came with conditions, and so, and I
strings,
think
strings
that's what,
attached.
strings attached, and I think that's what the Spirit was trying to tell me, is like, look, if you even go
not
down
worth
that
the
direction,
strings.
it's not,
Yeah.
very much not,
Good
so.
one.
Yeah,
That's really good.
same lines, evidence gathering over time. And evidence from the Spirit, you know, not
Yes.
just like tangible
I was gonna
stuff.
say, do you have a notebook with
But
little
like-
tick marks in your purse?
I try not to go there,
Camille.
but yeah.
Collecting that evidence, yeah. If
Okay.
it's spirit led, I like that a lot. Keep going.
Does anybody have anything else to say? I get really self-conscious if I talk too much.
Don't.
It's my
This
weird
is an
thing.
awesome
So
group.
like, Kate, to me, like the hugest light bulb moment, top 5 light bulb moments of my life was when my son called me after stake president or his stake conference, and he was like, Mom, my stake president just taught us like the most amazing thing. So it's Richard Holtzoffel, who's a church history professor at BYU. Anyway, he said, Heavenly Father loves all of his children the same, which is something that I always wondered about, like, how can you love everybody the same? Anyway, but he said he trusts us differently. And to me, that has been so liberating to be like, okay, like my trust issue is with my dad. Like, I can love my dad, but I trust him a lot less than I did 5 years ago. And that's okay.
Okay.
That's not
Yes.
a sin to not have as
Yes.
much trust. Because, I mean, if you think about the temple, like, basically that's Heavenly Father saying, how much can I trust you with this information? And so it's not a bad thing to have varying levels of trust with people. That was just
Nice.
so liberating.
Because you
to
have
me.
different levels of trust, that means you have different boundaries.
Yes.
So if you trust them 100%, they get to go all the way in, they get to wreak havoc on your brain and on your heart, and if you're like, no, I don't trust you in here, then you can get boundaries and you can protect yourself.
And I recognize this was really interesting to me because Michelle actually coached me through this. So we believe everybody that comes into our life is like a messenger. Like they're a messenger that they bring something in. I think I've talked about that before, but I recognize that because he was my dad, I always felt awful when I got off the phone with my dad. Like the things he would tell me, I'd just be like, why would you even say that to me? Well, I recognized just because he's my dad, I don't have to have him in my life. And so after asking over and over again, Dad, this is what I really need from you. And he wasn't able to state that or do that for me, which is totally okay, right? But I didn't have to have him a part of my life. And I said, Dad, I think our journey here is done. Like, and it was so, I told Michelle, I'm like, why am I so at peace with this? And then that's when she's like, your dad brought you a message.
And a mess.
And a mess. Well, no,
No,
not
he was the opportunity for you to end
And
those
that
messes
mess.
within yourself.
Yes.
And then once that was healed, you no longer had to keep having that experience with him.
Yeah, because it was.
That's
I'm
right.
like, why am
That
I
is
so
true.
okay just saying, bye, Dad, I think our journey's done. I didn't say it like that, but
Yeah.
I did say, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was a really huge, so to trust myself enough to be like, my journey's done with my dad here. Like, he is accomplished, like, he sent me a message and I ended
Message
that
received.
message. Yes, message received.
Duly noted. Maybe not.
Awesome. That's interesting.
How about you, Michelle? Do you have any thoughts on this process? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Just like my feeling. Like I just trust my
You're good.
feelings.
Yeah.
And then I also allow people to be human and know that I can always trust myself and I don't put that responsibility on anybody else. And then I always ask myself, like, do I want to live in love or fear? Those are really our only two options. And so I don't want to live in fear, so how can I stay in a space of love and also maintain that trust / boundaries, whatever it is. And then when I'm feeling disconnected or like not able to trust somebody, I always check in with myself and ask if I can trust myself and my higher power. And then it kind of settles that for me. Because really it's a lot of times for me, when I'm feeling insecure with myself, I project that on other people.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so when I'm feeling confident with my own choices and my own direction, I don't depend as much on that like outside
Yeah.
validation.
Well, you probably feel less vulnerable.
Yeah,
And if you're feeling less vulnerable, then it doesn't really matter as much how trustworthy they are.
exactly.
You're trustworthy, God's trustworthy, you're gonna be okay even if they're not perfectly trustworthy.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I
Yeah.
rephrase it right?
perfect.
Okay.
I love that. Everything you said, I love. I feel like when I have issues with trust, a lot of times with my husband, there's things that I do that I keep to myself. I'm like, he doesn't need to know about this part over here. And it's like in the last few years, it's been coming up more. It's like a feeling of discomfort that I have to keep revisiting. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel guilty that I have this amount of money in this account he doesn't know about? Or whatever. I'm not saying I did that. Anyway, so I love how you phrase that.
Yeah.
Perfect. How about you, Jeanette? Any thoughts on this?
I'm
you
not
do?
anywhere near where you guys are with trust yet, but
Okay. It's a process.
I try to believe behavior and not words. Yeah, I look
That
for,
was a
You
perfectly
look for
phrased-
evidence, right?
That's a perfectly
You look for
phrased sentence, by the way. I like that.
yeah, so I just kind of watch what are they really doing instead of what they're saying.
Actions speak louder than words. I like that.
For sure.
I feel like that's a really awesome trait, Jeanette, because when you get really good at watching, you pick up all kinds of information. People are broadcasting their information all the time. Part of the problem is we're not good enough, or we're not skilled enough to know what they're broadcasting because we're just not paying attention. But when we start to pay attention to the signals that people are sending out, we'll get them. You know what I mean? You can definitely become, it's kind of like the body language thing, but it's even more than that. You can pick up on the vibes people are sending out, and that's information. That's helpful, for sure. For sure. How about you, Jen?
I kind of came at blank, but then as we kind of been talking about this, I realized that, about some trust issues with my husband, as far as, I don't share a lot of things with him, especially if there are things that are like really dear to my heart, or really important, because he kind of tramples on those, and so, not all things, we have a good relationship, we have a good marriage, but like anything spiritual, or like I realized about this class, like I didn't even tell him I was taking this class. Like I did eventually, but like I didn't say, oh honey, I'm gonna take this class, what do you think? It was like I just did it, and then it was kind of an afterthought, oh, I didn't even mention that, because I think it was something that was like, I felt like it was important to me, not that he would say I couldn't do it, but it just like, he would be like, well, why would you want to do something like that? Right? You know,
So
Yeah.
just
has asked me about it, you know, and I'm like, oh, it's really good, I like it, but I don't really tell him like what we're talking about or anything, because it's like he's not in that place.
Well, that brings up a question in my head. Do you have to? Do you have to put all that in front of
Well,
him
it's
when
like the
it's like,
shoulds.
yeah,
It's kind of like I should have a marriage where I can talk about these things,
yeah.
but sometimes it's just not that way, you know, and it's just like, but it would be nice if you could. But then again, you know, it's nicer to not have those things trampled on. My mom, she'll have like something really cool, like a really cool coincidence happen that totally to her means like my sister is watching over her, she's close by, you know, and it's super special to her, and she'll tell me, but she would never tell my dad, because he just like he's super convicted to the gospel, and he believes like spiritual things. He believes in the Joseph Smith saw God and everything, but he wouldn't really believe that my mom finding this penny or hearing this song or all these things together meant my sister was right in the room with her.
Well, just like this week, you
You
know,
know.
like how Mason had fallen off the cliff this week and whatever, like I fully believe like
What?
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you backtrack a little bit?
She had a really cool
Okay,
post on
okay,
Facebook
so
to this.
All right.
I'm friending all of you today.
Yeah, you need to friend these people. Tell
So
them.
my 12-year-old, he's very active and he gets himself in a lot of pickles a lot. And they were at scout camp this weekend, and they were up along this ridge, and it like went to like this really narrow, like it kind of like went to this end, and they were playing cops and robbers, and he was like literally just like right on the edge, and it was at night, it was dark, and he went to step around this cactus, and the whole ledge just like fell out from underneath him, and he fell like 25 feet down this cliff,
Did he, like,
rocks
roll?
falling on him, so like, and he's like, he kind of fell down backwards, but then he kind of like twists himself around, and he's like grabbing at the rock, like trying to like, but he like scraped up his elbows,
Abrasion.
and then he like has scrapes like all around his body and like
Is he
all around
turned?
his legs, because he was like trying to like grapple, like hold onto the mountain, but he just kind of like boom, boom, boom. He landed on his feet, by the way.
Oh my gosh,
And-
angels are like,
And
Right?
there was not like a single scratch above here, like at
Wow.
all. And so I always feel like his guardian angels work overtime. I know they do.
They're like, we had a break.
Absolutely.
But like when I was doing the laundry, I took out the shirt that he had on that day. He would not wear his scout shirt, and but he had to wear his Moab shirt, and that's where my grandparents are from. And I pulled the shirt out, and all the blood had come out of it that was cleared on the front of his shirt. And I held up this T-shirt from Bob, and I just had this overwhelming feeling, just like really super powerful that my grandparents were there, that they were protecting him. But I haven't told anyone that. I couldn't share that with my husband, because he just like, whatever, you know what I mean? But it was like really sacred to me. And so, just things like that, I just don't feel like I can share. But you know, I had another really cool experience this week. We've had such a hard time in our family with like family homemaking, and I feel like it's really important to be like, come follow me or whatever, and have these learning experiences with your family. So I really prayed hard about how I could do that with my family and what it would look like, because I knew it wasn't going to look like pulling out a manual and reading, oh, let's read from the Bible together. That's not going to happen. And so I kind of really thought about how I could get my different family members to participate, because I don't want it to just be coming from me.
Right.
And so I came up with, I could do maybe just like a little message, like a little summary of the lesson, like on Sunday night or whatever. And then my husband, I gave him Monday night, and his job is to come up with a topic, something that we call them words of wisdom from dad or whatever, something that he wants to share with his kids, teach them. And so what he taught on Monday was about change, how change is important and we need to embrace change, which I thought was great, you know, very neutral, whatever. And then Xander, he's gonna pick a video message to share with us, just like a 5-minute video message. And then Mason, I gave him this little thought book from the Bible, and so he can read the little thought book, stuff like that. And then I'm gonna do like a little family history, like little story. So we kind of have like a little theme night, you know, like how you have like your different. But I thought Heavenly Father gave that to me to fit like what my family
Your
needs
family's
right now.
needs, yeah.
And so
That's awesome.
For sure.
I love it.
That's great.
for sharing that. Do you have anything to add to the list here, Sarah? Your process of trusting other
No,
people?
it's when we were talking about this lesson. the
Says
other day.
Sarah's thought.
Yes, Sarah's thought is I trust everyone all the time about everything. I have no discernment. I have no process. So literally, I was like, when I was thinking about picturing myself journaling in this thing, I was like, I really do want to know what your guys' process is, because like my husband, you know, he told me like there was rumors about him and his first wife, and you guys probably didn't even know he had a first wife. It's new.
I didn't know.
You don't even know.
I'm like, what? He had a first one?
Yeah, so they were married for like a year and a half. Anyway, so like he just said, no, I wasn't abusive. She was crazy, and I just totally believed him. I didn't even like ask her. She was right there on campus. I know. Have we heard
Well,
this
I just
before?
laugh because like dating, like
Yeah.
they're like my ex-wife was crazy.
You're like,
Why was she crazy?
let's
talk about why
this.
she might be
Let's go to the
crazy.
why.
Let's go to the why. Yeah, define crazy, by
Yeah.
the way. So anyways, and so I've been, I had like a 4-hour conversation with her last week on Thursday, and it was like mind-blowing to talk to someone who's been married to your husband. It's mind-blowing. And I just realized that I just trusted him, and I didn't even ask questions, and there was a million red flags. Even not knowing her story, I had a million red flags. Like looking back when you read books about narcissists and psychological abuse, there's 30 red flags at the beginning of this one book called Psychopath Free, and like 25 of them I just totally completely overlooked. I didn't want to see them. One of you guys said something about like, well, you said try to believe their behavior, not they're just words, and I don't know, so many of the things you guys talked about was just like, why didn't I do that? I just wanted it to be true. I wanted him to be real. I wanted it to be this perfect scenario, and so I just trusted him, and I just shouldn't have. So anyways, I have learned my lesson. I hope.
Everything happens because you need the lesson, I feel like.
Yeah, I needed a lot of
There's
lessons.
no use in like looking back and flogging yourself.
You know,
over
but there's
what
use in
happened.
looking back and saying, okay, I missed those red
Yeah,
flags
learn
because I
from it.
willingly looked the other way because he was a
Exactly.
cute doctor to be.
Exactly.
Did I deserve more than that? Yes. And so I'll be smarter next time. So.
Damn it.
One other thing as far as process is I heard this visualization of like we are houses. And I'm like, I think I'm in Castle. I'm gonna
Yeah.
upgrade that.
Yeah.
But basically, like some people stay outside the fence. You know, like I work with
We
several
did- that's what
people.
we talked
They
about
will
before.
never get. Oh, have you guys talked
And
about
that's
this
There's
before?
moon. There's
That's
moon
right.
people.
Ah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
talk about moon people. They're
Yes.
not even on the earth. But
Yeah.
They're like so far beyond the fence. They're on the moon.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, just having kind of those different levels, and sometimes nobody's in the inner sanctum with me.
I think
like,
and
and
it's
that's
only
okay.
you and God in the inner sanctum.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I decided. You and God.
I like that.
And
it
then,
kind of helps, and I'll visualize it like, okay, what does this room look like today? And everybody's either on the front porch or on the grounds
Mhm.
or outside the fence or the moon.
Yeah, Starbucks across town. Or
Wow. Yeah.
Starbucks.
And the thing is too is like so what we talked about Brave Girls Camp, we talked about this a lot because the whole thing about Brave Girls is soul restoration, is you're restoring your soul house.
Yes.
And so so we kick everybody out right off the bat at the beginning. Everybody, everything, you know, and we're gonna start kind of from scratch and rebuilding it. But as your house gets stronger, you can let people get closer, or as the healthier they are and the healthier you are, the closer they can get to the fence. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So if they're a really unhealthy person, even no matter how healthy you are, they're gonna be on the moon all the time. Whatever they say, you can't even hear it. Even with the loudest megaphone, you can't hear it. It does not affect you. And then it's like, but the healthier people can get closer, and the healthier you are, the more you can handle their information and their impact in your life. And so it's just kind of like those can be flexible, but sometimes it's just like your dad. You just sent him to the moon. That's all you did. It's like fine. Like you served your purpose. You taught me the things I needed to learn, and you can go to the moon now. And I can love you from here at the moon. I can love all the way to the moon, and you can love me back. I just might not feel it, and it might not matter, but you can still love moon people. That was another aha moment. One of our girls were like, I can love moon people? Like, I thought I only sent people to the moon that I hated. Not at all. You just sent people to the moon.
Or it
who
could
hurt
be
you.
like for a while
Or
you're sending them there,
it's
right?
not a permanent,
They
yeah.
might move.
Some
They
people
might
are
come
permanent,
closer
like where
into
you
your
know they are toxic and they will never change, you know.
Yeah.
I taught this concept to my friend this week.
You did?
I did.
What the
yeah.
heck? Good job,
She
girl.
was doing my hair. Her son is 18. And
That's why you had to
he's
stay
10.
after and talk for an hour.
Well, that was part of it. Her son he's living at home. He's 18 and he he's bringing all kinds of crap home and they're just not living by the rules, whatever. And she just barely did her house remodel. So I use that analogy and I said, and because she's been kind of going through some changes and kind of trying to, you know, she started working in the temple and I'm like, you're restoring your house. You have this beautiful new home. I said, would you let anybody come in with a can of spray paint and a sledgehammer?
Nice.
Of course you wouldn't.
Right.
You know, you have
Love
to
that
keep
analogy.
them, so
Buddy tees and all that.
So true though. You
Yeah.
have to see that visual.
Yeah.
Like, it's not worth it.
Visuals are the
Just because they
best.
want to doesn't mean we have to let them.
Okay, we have 30 minutes to go through our other units, so I want to talk for just a second. I appreciate, first of all, thank you guys so much for sharing. This is just a conversation that I'm not saying that we have all the answers about how you learn to trust somebody, but it's to me, the fact that you discuss it and you consider the questions and look at it is huge. And so thanks for being vulnerable and sharing your thoughts. I, for one, have learned a ton from the things that you guys said, and I will factor it into what I'm doing.
I for two have also.
And she for two. So one of the reasons we had you do the time and the value thing at the beginning is because as you learn more specifically what your values are and you begin to become more congruent with your actions and your values and your words, and all of that becomes more congruent, you become a bigger vessel and better able to communicate your message that you're here to communicate, whatever it is. Okay, so I read this little thing about Gandhi, and I thought it was so interesting, so I'm going to share it with you. This is a quote from his personal secretary, whose name is very difficult to pronounce because he's Indian. So I'll tell you what he said. What Gandhi thinks, what he feels, what he says, and what he does are all the same. He does not need notes. You and I, we think one thing, we feel another, we say a third and do a fourth. So we need notes and files to keep track. This is what his secretary said after Gandhi gave a speech and he got a standing ovation. And so his response to that, Gandhi's response was, "My life is an indivisible whole, and all my activities run into one another. My life is my message." I'm like,
Can you email
Love
us that? That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
wouldn't it be great to say this about everywhere that you show up? Like you reminded me, the spirituality thread. Everywhere you show up in your life, you're the same person. You're real, you're authentic, because your message comes through, because you've done the work to figure out where you're incongruent, including, for me, the trust thing. There's a lot of incongruencies in me when it comes to trust, and it's something that I'm investigating, I'm looking at, I'm questioning, and I know I'll get there when it's time. So anyway, I'm going to turn the time over to Sarah so she can talk about trusting the Savior.
That's right.
I know.
Okay, yes, feel free to eat some chocolate.
I'm definitely
Okay, so obviously there's no way we're going to leave this subject of trust without talking about trusting God. Let's see here.
I'm
coming for those. Think about,
thank you.
okay, think about if you wanted to learn basketball.
You want me to write this? You got pictures, right?
Not yet. What? Pictures?
No, I said you got pictures of it.
Oh, pictures of it. Yeah, I'm like, pictures to put on here? I was confused. Okay, so, you know, it's really sometimes kind of frustrating that we can't trust anybody 100%. Like, do you just wish there was one human on the planet that you could trust 100%? Like, you can't, even your husbands, you can't, because they're human, they're flawed, they're fallen. It's just a fact of life, so that's kind of frustrating. So I love listening to talk radio, and Steve Deace is somebody that I just started listening to like in probably October of last year, because Glenn Beck's radio company, his Blaze, whatever, they combined with this Christian radio broadcasting network or something like that. Anyway, so there's a new person to listen to. And of course I have to listen to him extra hard because I talked to him once on the radio. I called in right before Thanksgiving and he took my call and we had this awesome conversation. And he was super nice to me, of course. And then he referred to me later on in the end of the broadcast. He referred to our conversation, and it was really awesome. I was like, yes.
Is he single? Not for me, for you.
Yeah, I know.
When you're legit.
Yeah, I was like, could you imagine being married to a guy who already has his own radio show? Boom, there I go. That's like one of my secret dreams, is like to have my own radio show. Or own podcast.
It's not a secret anymore.
You can do it. You
Whoa!
can do it. It's out there.
I used to want to do like a political radio, but now I'm like, oh, I could do this, you know, talk about this stuff 24/7. Anyways, So the other day he was talking about, so he's really Christian. He's a Catholic, and he is just like, he has a photographic memory. So he remembers everything he's ever read, and he remembers the concepts, and he intertwines them, and he has the best vocabulary. It's really fun to listen to him because he's just so smart. And everything is 100% based on Christ. Like, all his political views are based on his Christian perspective. And it's really fun. And then, you know, there's a few inconsistencies as far as like his views and my views, but he understands who Christ is, and it's really cool. Anyway, so lots of times they're talking about Trump. He has a lot of people who are like totally worshiping at the Trump altar. And they get super mad at him because he doesn't worship at the Trump altar, even though Trump's doing a lot of these things that he politically would want him to do. He's still not willing to just totally support Trump. And it makes a lot of his listeners crazy. And so he was talking one day about how even if I wanted to be the best basketball coach there is, or I wanted to learn basketball, who am I going to turn to? I'm going to turn to Coach K. Okay, so, you know, the Duke basketball coach, right? We like to call him Kruzewski, because that's what it looks like, his name, but Coach Krzyzewski. Yeah. His names look like Kruzewski. So you can call him Krzyzewski, Kruzewski, or Coach K. But he is the winningest coach out there. And he has just, there's only one coach that has more championships. UCLA has more championships than Duke does. But even if you wanted to learn basketball from like the best coach out there, he has a lot of losses, you know? I mean, he does not have an undefeated record in his entire history as a coach. He's like, who is the one person that has no losses, 0, perfect record? Could you imagine if there was a human on earth with a perfect record in basketball his entire career? I mean, wouldn't you listen to every single thing he said? So he's like, of course I'm not gonna worship at the idol of anyone, at the altar of anyone, only Christ. And he goes, just think about it. Christ came down to earth. He lived a mortal life. You know, he had to eat food. He had to walk on streets. He had to get dirty and wash his feet and all these things. He lived a mortal life, but he never, ever failed. He never, ever made a mistake. He has a perfect record. He was even killed, and he rose from the dead. Like, why wouldn't we trust somebody who did that? And I just ate it up. I was like, that is amazing. And that's how my life has been. I mean, it has been me and God for a long time. But once I realized my husband was deeply flawed, and I didn't trust his worldview. I couldn't trust his view of me. I couldn't trust his view of God. I couldn't trust his view of life. And it was like every single decision I have to make from here on out, once I realized that, is me and the Lord. And thank goodness I had the Lord to rely on, because me is really not that great. I mean, I'm deeply flawed, you know, just like the whole thing about the 4 tendencies or whatever, the 4 motivations, you know. I mean, I have one way of looking at how I'm motivated. I have one worldview because of the way I was raised. I don't have this, you know, just experience and miracles and blessings and all that. But I mean, we're only one person. We only have one mind. We only have one way of looking at things. Even when our view gets expanded, we're still so flawed and so imperfect. So just always, just remember that, especially if you're feeling really frustrated that you can't find that one person to 100% have your back or rely on you. And even you guys, you know what I'm saying? Like, even when you have your person, you still have to rely on the Lord. And then, to me, that's like the best feeling.